Hello there, he is Joel Chua. I'm Pamela Ho. Thanks for tuning to The Living Room on 938 Live. Well, she is best known as a local playwright, a somewhat controversial one at that. Well, one of my favorites, and perhaps controversial at the time it was staged, was Invitation to Treat. Well, a trilogy of plays consisting of mergers and accusations, wills and succession, and jointly and severably. Well, to date she has written over 15 plays, which have been produced in Singapore and the ASEAN region, and among them, prize-winning Peter's Passionate Pursuits in 1985, and then Billy Sang the Blues in 2004. A piece, in fact, that was specially commissioned by the Remaking Singapore Committee for a private ceremony, at which the then Prime Minister Goh Chok Tong was a guest of honour.
The list goes on. In 2006, her play, The Campaign to Confer the Public Service Star on JBJ, was staged as part of the inaugural Singapore Theatre Festival to sell out crowds, unsurprisingly. But apart from playwriting, our guest today is a familiar figure in the local media scene as well. You'll probably remember her as anchor of the critically acclaimed current affairs show After Hours. She's provided communications consultancy and held top management portfolios within the television production arena, and currently serves as chairperson of the Advertising Standards of Singapore Association Council.
And although she is a personality in the arts and media scene, she is by training a lawyer. Well, following a stint as a prosecutor as well as an international finance lawyer, she is now Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law at the National University of Singapore, where she directs the Legal Skills Program. And if you haven't guessed, yes, our guest today on The Living Room is Eleanor Wong, and she has recently published a volume of poetry that has been translated into Mandarin called Life Science, and this is by First Fruits Publication. In fact, this is not her first book of poetry, but her solo book of poetry, we have to say. And we're indeed thrilled to have her tell us more about her foray into poetry, what inspires her to write, and perhaps get some tips for you if you are an aspiring writer yourself. Well, Eleanor, thanks so much for taking time to join us in The Living Room. Good morning.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Pam and Joe.
Yeah, in fact, it's welcome back to The Living Room.
Exactly. So first off, Eleanor, how many times have you been described as an overachiever by your family and friends?
Actually, I think that, I think that if I had to describe my life, I'm a loser, but a very happy loser. And I think that we place too much importance on sort of winning, and that actually, if you look at the odds, most of us in any race, there's a much higher odds of not winning than of winning. But I'm very happy with my life. I've done a lot of the things that I've wanted to, and I think part of how I do things is to enjoy everything that I'm doing while I'm doing it. Yeah.
And the most modest overachiever I've ever met.
Yeah. Actually, while I'm at it, I should say one thing that I was very bad at was at proofreading my resume, because I'm now no longer, you see, talk about not achieving. I'm now no longer president of the Advertising Standards Association of Singapore.
A former one.
Yeah, I'm a former one only.
But how are you a loser? I mean, I don't get it.
No, I think my point was just a commentary on I think this obsession with having to be number one or winning, and I think that for most of us we are all achievers. We're all achievers and ought to be proud of what we do, whether or not objectively someone sort of put a one on it or not. And many of my works, I'm happiest when someone comes up to me and says the work touched them. Things like awards and all, they're nice to have if you get them. Very few of my plays actually have. But the thing that always warms my heart is when someone does come up to me and say, I watched, for example, 1992 production of Mergers, which was sort of a strange little piece when it first came out, dealing as it did with a lesbian lawyer and all that sort of stuff. And, people come up to me 10, 20 years later and say, well, it made a difference to see that piece. And, those are the sorts of achievements, I suppose. And on that score, I would like very much to be an overachiever.
Right, and of course you've written over 15 plays. I mean, why did you choose plays as a medium
because I'm so lazy, you see. When you have plays, you have to work with people, right? And then they hound you for deadlines, and they tell you that, tomorrow is the audition. Wouldn't it be nice to have a few passages so that the actors can actually read something during the audition? So, and in fact, the latest book, I think it probably wouldn't have come out except that Enoch, who helped to publish it, and also is the translator of the Mandarin stuff. I mean, he was the one who kind of said, "Oh well, I'm actually quite interested in translating some of these pieces." So that kind of gave it more momentum to come to fruition, so to speak. Yeah.
Right, you started playwriting rather early on. Your first play came out in 1985, is it?
Yeah, it's either rather early on or I'm quite old now. I think it's
rather early on, rather earlier on. Well, were you ever trained in playwriting formally?
No, not at all. And you got to realize that, you know, in those days, who was really? I mean, I think that all of us, and there was a group, I think, in the mid-80s who sort of, you know, you think of all the names like King Sen and Harish and Ovidia. I mean, people active in English language theatre. All of us did it in some sort of like too stupid to know that we don't know what we're doing kind of a way, and just go into it. And I think I dare say none of us was trained. It's a very different generation today, but that was the reality 30 years ago, goodness, yeah.
Right. And, you know, you once said, you know, and I read this, that the writing process itself, it may take about, 8 to 10 weeks, but the thinking process may have stretched like, over a year. Now, when do you know that it's time, to put pen to paper?
You don't. I mean, I tell a lot of young writers, if you're looking for a how or a process or a method, I think any of us who write are lying if we tell you we know how it happens. That's part of, for me, the magic of it. And of course, I use that as also a very convenient excuse for knocking on my door for the deadlines.
It hasn't happened yet. Come back tomorrow.
The inspiration hasn't hit yet. And sometimes it's been as long as years and years before something really coalesces. And I think that's only maybe just my process either. And I know that other writers, of course, do this very differently, and they do have a sort of a fixed time, and that probably speaks to their character. And I'm probably someone who's just a bit strange and can't tell what I'm doing and why. Yeah.
Well, was there ever a specific point in your life earlier on when it just dawned on you that hey, I'm here to write. I was made to write. Writing is my vocation.
No, I mean, did it ever dawn on you that sort of being a DJ is your vocation? It did, I guess. Was there a moment?
When I signed the contract.
Exactly, right? So, I mean, I think a lot of things happen. In the doing, and as I said earlier on, I try not to sort of say I was made to write or to anything. I think different activities come up along the years that interest you and excite you, and the main thing is to be open. Writing was something I always did from the time I was very, very young for some reason or other. And, the first play that actually got done in a big way was Peter's Passionate Pursuit. And it happened finally, mostly because I was bored doing something else, So I think interest and passion drives you, and if you answer that call, then maybe good things happen. And sometimes some of those are dead ends, but very often when you answer interest and passion, good things do happen.
So as a high-flying finance lawyer, that wasn't enough to keep you interested. You had to find something else to do as well. That was intensely interesting, and now what I do at the law school is also intensely interesting. And when the dean sort of sees me in the corridors and he goes, "Well, you're looking happy," I said, "Yeah, because the day I'm not looking happy, you won't also see me in these corridors." I mean, I think that I've been lucky. The opportunities have also come along, but I do think that for me anyway, the trick has been to be happy, and then many things actually interest me intensely, and thankfully I've had the opportunity to do quite a few of them.
Yeah. Right, and poetry being one of them. I mean, okay, at what point did poetry as a form of expression, surface? I mean, under what circumstances did poetry?
Oh, hasn't everyone?